we have Roanoke, West Virginia. In a place called Roanoke in West Virginia, there is a legend that has pretty much scared the crap out of the married men in that town. What is this legend? Well, as the story goes, apparently in 1902, over the course of a week, many married men came across a woman in black. And this woman followed these men back to their homes and then disappeared when they got inside. In some of the stories around this woman, it is said that she did this due to the men being unfaithful, and some of the stories say that it was to prove that the men would be unfaithful. All of these men were of different backgrounds and social statuses. All they had in common was that they were married, and they all had described the same event. Apparently though, after a week, the woman was gone from this town. But then in a town nearby, there were reports of seeing her. In our number 9 spot, we have the Peyton Randolph House. The Peyton Randolph House is located in Williamsburg. So many mysterious things seemingly happen here, and people believe it to be as a result of all of the death that has occurred there. The legend goes that an unnamed female slave cursed the house before she died, and since then there have been too many deaths to count, from a Civil War soldier to a young boy who fell out of a tree to a young girl who fell from a window to 2 men who were fatally hurt during a fight. People believe the property to have a poltergeist, and there have been many reports of ghostly laughing, singing, glass breaking, people being touched, pushed, and even a security guard has said he was held down with extreme force. Yeah, best not to visit this place just to be safe. In our number 8 spot, we have the cursed tree. In Jamestown, there is a legend of a cursed tree. Apparently there once was a girl named Sarah Harrison who was engaged, but then broke off her engagement when she met a man named James Blair, whom she then ended up marrying. This upset her parents very much so, because he did not come from much money and he was also much older. When both Sarah and James died shortly after they were married, they were buried together, but not too long after, a strange thing happened. A tree began to grow and the roots separated their graves. People now believe that this was an act by her mother to separate them for eternity, but of course, this is just a theory. In our number 7 spot, we have the Avenel House. This is a house in West Virginia that is open to paranormal teams for investigation. That's how haunted it is. There have been many people that have claimed to have captured EVPs in this house, which are electronic voice phenomena. So cool! People have confirmed hearing a cat meowing, seeing an orb that looks like an eye, smelling tobacco when no one's around, feeling dizzy, and hearing many strange noises. People have also reported seeing a phantom lady in white floating down the halls or in the garden with a parasol in her hand. Sounds like a pretty classy ghost. In our number 6 spot, we have Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. The Lake Shawnee Amusement Park has such a dark history that you should only visit it if you have extreme caution and are also looking to be spooked. There were quite a few people that lost their lives while the park was active from 1926 to 1966. In fact, it was because of these deaths that the park gained such a poor reputation and then ended up closing. It has also been said that the park used to be a Native American burial ground, and so it is believed that a lot of ghosts haunt this park because of it. Makes sense. If this ground was once a holy place where bodies were buried, I mean, that is just super sad that it was eventually turned into an amusement park. If I were one of the spirits of these bodies, I would definitely be haunting every person in that park. In our number 5 spot, we have 22 Mine Road. Apparently West Virginia has a haunted road. Damn, West Virginia is seemingly filled with a lot of dark and haunted places. Allegedly in 1932, there was a woman by the name of Mammy Thurman who was killed, and her body was thrown out and left on this road, 22 Mine Road. A man that is said to have been an illiterate handyman was charged with the crime, even though many believed that the real guy that was guilty of the crime was never found. No one quite knows where she was buried, but they say that her ghost haunts this road. In our number 4 spot, we have Shepherdstown. There is a town in West Virginia called Shepherdstown that is supposed to be very haunted. It's an old Civil War town though, so Makes sense. Probably every place on this planet that has had a war near it or by it is most likely haunted. Anyways, this town is very known for its ghost tours, which is kind of fun. Many visitors have seen strange phenomena, so they might as well capitalize it. Okay, honestly, I know the title of this video says terrifying, but truly, this one actually seems kind of fun and interesting to visit. I don't know, I'm kinda in the Halloween spirit though, so that might be contributing towards my impression of this town. In our number 3 spot, we have St. Albans Sanatorium in Radford. St. Albans Sanatorium, located in Radford, has a long history of brutality. There once was a horrible massacre there where the Shawnee Indians took the lives of many of the settlers in the 1700s and took the survivors back to their village. A part of the Civil War was also there, so to say that this place has low vibes could be an understatement. The grounds were originally made to be a boys' home in 1892 and specifically for tough, out-of-control boys. Many of the boys ended up taking their own lives on the campus. It was then bought by a doctor who apparently gave very harsh psychiatric treatments in the 1900s. Many people report not only seeing ghosts at this place but also hearing voices, getting touched, etc. Apparently there is a room with a bowling alley, which is kind of fascinating, and anyways, this place is said to have a woman ghost that is forever bowling? I'm just joking, I wish. Well, she is said to be roaming this room, so I bet you she bowls when no one's around. In our number 2 spot, we have the Public Hospital of Williamsburg. The Public Hospital of Williamsburg is now an art museum in West Virginia, and it is one of those places that people say gives you the creeps. It was one of the first mental hospitals in America, and so as you can imagine, many souls have walked through its doors. Apparently, it wasn't kept very well for the patients, and they were also treated pretty badly. People believe that is why it is very much haunted nowadays. At one point, there was supposedly a doctor who was trying to make a change in the hospital for the better and improve the lives of his patients, but then he ended up taking his own life. Many have reported seeing his ghost on the grounds as well as past patient ghosts. A lot of people speak about feeling watched while touring the hospital and that it exudes bad vibes. Well, that's terrifying and possibly a fun Halloween experience all in one. In our number 1 spot, we have the West Virginia State Penitentiary. Well, I saved this one for last because pretty much everyone knows about this famous prison, and I wanted some of the other lesser known locations to shine first. In case you don't know about this prison, this is one of the most brutal prisons that ever existed. It was active between 1876 to 1995, and while it was active, prisoners experienced fatal beatings as well as so much violence and had their life taken by electrocution and hanging. There were many riots inside the prison and many protests outside of the prison to have it shut down due to the inhumane acts against the prisoners. It is said to be extremely haunted by those that lost their lives there.
At number 10 is the Gore Orphanage. There's this place called the Gore Orphanage in Vermilion? I'm not from Ohio, I don't know. Vermilion, and it's got a spooky reputation that's been hanging around for ages. Picture this, back in the early 1900s, a gnarly house fire burnt down this building and it's game over for everyone inside. Now, the story goes that the ghosts of these poor souls are still lurking around, both in the building and in the woods nearby. People who've dared to venture there have reported some wild stuff, like laughter and cries echoing place. But here's where it gets even crazier. It was a satanic cult spot where they did some messed up rituals, while others think it's just a messed up orphanage with no supernatural vibes. Now, I gotta say that there's no hard evidence to back up these claims, but the legend lives on, my friends. Ghost hunters and paranormal buffs keep rolling in even though it's a no-go zone because it's technically private property. So, you know, spooky stuff happens in Ohio too. At number 9, the Spring Grove Cemetery. Cemeteries are like a magnet for spooky stuff, and the Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati, Ohio is no exception. It's like the second biggest cemetery in the whole US of A, which is like prime real estate for ghostly shenanigans. One story that stands out is about this dude named C.C. Brewer, who was like an optometrist. Before he kicked the bucket, however, he was all, yo, take my eyes out and stick them on my gravestone. But relax, because they're not real eyes, just some glass ones. But people swear those fake eyes follow them around like a creepy optical illusion. And then there's this caretaker who was all alone one night and something tugged at his pants. The dude freaked out and bolted and came back later thinking he'd find like a snake or something, but no, just graves. If you're enjoying the video so far, you could support the channel by subscribing to Most Amazing and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Lima Tuberculosis Hospital. This place opened its doors back in 1911, dealing with the gruesome tuberculosis cases of the time. In the 60s, they slapped the name Ottawa Valley Hospital on it, but it didn't stick around for long, because it shut down in the 70s. Now picture this. It's a hospital that's been abandoned for over 5 decades. It's like a real-life horror movie set, crumbling and sinister. But the real kicker is that people claim some of the patients who met their unfortunate end at this hospital might still be lurking around. Yup, you heard me right. Ghost hunters eager to get a scare have snuck in and swear they've seen spirits roaming the haunted hallways. Trespassing here is a big no-no though, so don't go thinking about your own ghost hunting adventure there, unless you're a rule breaker. But hey, as long as the place is still standing, it's hands down one of Ohio's most bone-chilling haunts. At number 7 is the Hook Man. This spine-tingling Ohio legend in the village of New Richmond. He's a ghastly figure with a hook for a hand. Yeah, the classic hook-handed ghost story, but Ohio's got its own twist on it. There's this doctor and his wife living on Pond Run Road. They had a mentally disturbed son locked up in the basement most of the time, and one stormy night, lightning strikes their house, turning it into an inferno. When the authorities show up, their parents are toast, but no sign of the boy. Just a severed hand chained to the wall. Creepy, right? Now the boy grows up lurking the woods, stealing from nearby homes. Couples end up unalived, and folks think it's the Hook Man's doing. Classic stuff like a couple making out in the car, hearing a weird noise, and the guy decides to investigate, but bam! Hooked to the cranium. At number 6, the Coin Mansfield incident. So picture this. It's 1973 in Mansfield, Ohio, and you've got these 4 National Guard dudes just chilling in a helicopter doing their thing. But then, out of nowhere, bam! They spot this massive metallic frisbee looking thing up in the sky. I mean, UFO alert. These guys aren't your average UFO spotters though. They're trained military pilots, so they know their stuff. And guess what? This mysterious disc isn't just hanging out. It starts creeping towards them. Panic mode activated. They dodge and weave, but the UFO just won't quit. It's like playing tag with an ET, but way less fun. They report the whole shebang, and even the military and the FAA think it's legit. Radar data and ground witnesses back up their story too. But here's the kicker. Nobody can explain what the heck that thing was. UFO or not, it's a spine-tingling story that still haunts Ohio's history. At number 5, the Franklin Castle in Cleveland is a doozy. This place, built in the 1800s, screams Victorian elegance, but beneath that gentle facade lies a sinister tale that sends shivers down your spine. Haynes Tiedemann, the OG owner, had this castle built for his family, but tragedy lurked within its walls. One night, his family fell victim to infectious diseases and other mysterious causes, and eventually the parents followed suit. After the Tiedemans, another family moved in, and guess what? They kicked the bucket too, right there in the castle. Some even suspect foul play, like a real-life Agatha Christie novel. And let's not forget the secret rooms and hidden passageways. People think that those might have been used to stash bodies. So if you ever find yourself in the Franklin Castle, keep an eye out for ghostly apparitions lurking in the hallways. At number 4 is Helltown, Ohio. Forget about the name. Boston Mills was once a charming spot in the 1950s and 60s, but in the 70s, it got hit by a shocker. See, President Gerald Ford suddenly tells everyone, pack up and leave. Why? Because the US government had plans for a national park on the same land. But here's the twist. They never bulldozed the place, and the park never saw the light of day. So what gives? People started to speculate. Did they find something spooky? Some swear the town's church got into some satanic business, while others are convinced that a rusty old school bus by the main road is a ghostly hotspot. And brace yourselves for the weirdest part of all, rumors of mutilated citizens dwelling in the village. The truth is that it's locked away, buried in the mysterious history of Helltown. At number 3 is Beavers Creek State Park, Ohio, which is more than just a nature's haven. It's a hub spot of scary tales that keep residents up at night. One haunting centers around a woman who met a watery demise in the creek. Her body never recovered. Now her ghost roams the park, forever searching for her vanished kin. Eerie encounters don't stop there though. Historic structures like Gadsden's Mill and the log cabins have their own ghostly stories. Visitors have felt those hair-raising chills and the sensation of being watched, especially after sundown. And if that's not enough, there's the infamous headless motorcyclist. The legend has it that a biker lost his head in a gruesome crash along the park's road. Now his phantom cruises the park on a never-ending quest for his lost noggin. Some have claimed to spot his ghostly silhouette on a motorcycle, while others hear the distant roar of a phantom engine. Beaver Creek isn't just for nature lovers, it's a paranormal playground for the daring. At number 2 is Unalived Man's Curve in Cleveland. Back in 1969, a car full of 2019 smashed into a speeding 1969 Roadrunner, leaving just one survivor. But that's not even the creepiest part. At the intersection of state routes 125 and 222, where this tragic accident happened, there have been some spine-tingling sightings. People claim they've seen a faceless hitchhiker lurking there between 120 and 140 in the dead of night. Sometimes this ghostly figure stands in the middle of the road, causing drivers to swerve dangerously. And get this, if you don't dodge him in time, witnesses say he'll phase right through your car and start chasing it down the road before disappearing into thin air. But wait, there's more. Some folks say they've spotted either an Impala or a Roadrunner cruising down along the road with no one in the driver's seat. It's one of Claremont County's most haunted spots, so if you visit, remember to keep your eyes on the road if you dare. At number 1, have you ever heard of the place called Melon Heads from Ohio? It's like something straight out of a horror movie. A group of messed up, deformed folks with giant heads that look like melons. Freaky, right? Legend has it that they lurk in the woods around Kirtland, just waiting to give you the creeps. But here's the kicker. These poor souls were supposedly normal people once, but some evil mad scientists messed them up real bad with cruel experiments. They managed to escape, and now they're hiding out in the woods, surviving by hunting and staying far away from society. Some stories say they're aggressive, attacking anyone who dares set foot on their territory. Others say they're more mysterious, popping in and out like ghosts in the woods. Either way, it's a chilling tale that'll make you think twice about going near those Ohio forests.
Number 10. Sealbach Hilton. It's said at the Sealbach Hilton, if you take an elevator, a mysterious woman may greet you. According to the Historic Hotels of America website, in 1987, a chef working in the hotel saw a woman with dark hair wearing a long blue dress walk into an elevator with the doors still closed. Moments later, a housekeeper on another floor saw the same woman get into the elevator with closed doors. Now, who is this woman? Well, they think they have a theory. A 1936 newspaper report said a woman learned of her husband's death in an automobile accident as she waited for him at the hotel. So upset by the news, she jumped to her death in the number 3 elevator. She was also reported to have been seen wearing a long blue chiffon dress. So is this the mystery lady? I think so. Number 9. Geauga Lake Amusement Park. What once was the world's largest theme park is now an overgrown land of decaying roller coasters, empty concession stands, and abandoned ticket booths. In 1925, the Big Dipper roller coaster was built and it was an absolute hit. At the time, it was the largest coaster ever built, but soon tragedy struck. In 1942, the park was hit by a tornado, 6 people were injured, and the park experienced a lot of structural damages that cost around $1,000. Further tragedy struck in 1952 when a massive fire engulfed parts of the park, destroying many key features of the park, including the famous dance hall, the theater, the roller rink, and the bowling alley, with damages amounting to $500,000. From 2000 to 2004, the park was expanded and became Six Flags Ohio, and from 2004 to 2007, it became known as Geauga Lake again under the ownership of Cedar Fair. But on September 21st, 2007, Cedar Fair announced the park would not be reopening, and it has been abandoned ever since. The only thing left standing at the former amusement park is the Big Dipper roller coaster, and with that much tragedy there, it's no wonder this place is haunted. Number 8. The Phantom Car on Route 40 to Englewood. In the 1950s, people would be driving along the highway and see a green-tinged lit-up skeleton supposedly driving a car on Route 40. At least 5 stories of the Phantom Traveler have been reported to the local state highway patrol, many claiming the Phantom driver seemed to be challenging truck drivers to play chicken along the narrow and dangerous stretches of the highway. The Phantom allegedly wrote a letter to Sheriff J. Arthur Sherman of Clark County, daring the sheriff to chase him. Many think it's just a prankster, perhaps someone who is mentally ill, but regardless, this is still extremely creepy. Number 7. Wittenberg University. Historic Wittenberg University, chartered in 1845, has its share of spine-chilling tales, most notably one about a ghostly horse. The top floor of Myers Hall at Wittenberg University was used as a hospital for Civil War soldiers. Legend has it that a general, realizing he was about to die, requested that his faithful horse be brought to him. After saying goodbye to his companion, the general died, but the horse would not leave his side and was shot by soldiers. It's said that the sound of hoofbeats and neighing of the horse searching for its master can still be heard on the campus, which is like so cute but so sad, and a ghost horse sounds pretty cool to me. I mean, come on. Number 6. 6. Buckeye Charm. Buckeye Charm, a boutique owned by Jonah Powell, was once featured on the Travel Channel's paranormal investigation show Ghost Nation because it was so haunted. The property was built in 1877 as St. Augustine's Catholic Church. In 1976, the church was sold to become a commercial building. Now, during the filming, a loud EVP, electronic voice phenomenon recording was captured in the building, the words "Hallowed be thy name." The crew was concerned that the voice was a staged prank, Jonah recalled, because it was so loud and so clear, and they've had times in the past where people have tried to trick them or do something. So they had their crew shut down, turn on the lights, stop what they were doing, and search for speakers just to make sure it wasn't something that we were pulling over them. The ghost hunters suspected that a disgraced priest may be behind the scratches, bizarre apparitions, and the EVPs. Number 5. Waynesville Union Schoolhouse. Waynesville Union Schoolhouse was built in 1891 and is currently used for storage by the American Legion Hall. After the newer school was built up the hill, they shut it down and put the town library on the first floor. In the basement, the American Legion had their bar where all the guys went. It was the only place in town where you could drink, and eventually they built a newer building over here, so the building is just sitting there. Nobody can decide what to do about it, how to save it or tear it down, said a townsperson. Since the place has heard stories about strange happenings in the basement, Lee Allen, a local paranormal investigator, was consulted. Lee brought a psychic from Columbus and she knew nothing about this town. A group was in the building with some of the people from the American Legion and Lee's team, and all of a sudden the psychic said, "There's some men here that don't want you ladies here in the basement at all in their Legion Hall. They want you to leave." Now, the women knew it was a guy's place, but they didn't pay too much attention to what the psychic said until she said, "No, they're really serious. They want you to leave. This is not a place for ladies." Then, a ghost touched one of the women's shoulders and they screamed. The psychic said their names are Ralph and Carl and they really seriously want you to leave. So, they left. And I mean, if a ghost tells you to leave, you probably should. Later, the woman who had to leave said she told the story to a friend who grew up on the corner close to the American Legion and specifically mentioned Ralph and Carl. She said to me, "You're kidding me. Ralph Smith and Carl Siffer spend every day up there in the basement at the bar." Eventually, she heard Carl's wife say that if he was any place in town, that's where he'd be. Number 4. Poasttown Elementary School. Poasttown Elementary School was built in the 1930s and served as a place of education until the year 2000. It's a building in rural Ohio that is now known more for sightings of apparitions and spirits within its walls than it is for exams and detentions. It's believed that the reason for the hauntings could be linked to 2 separate train incidents in 1891 and 1910 that claimed 30 lives. Without a nearby hospital, the field where the school was built became a triage center. The theory is the spirits of those who died in the accident still remain on the land. Daryl Wisman, a former teacher who made Pottstown Elementary his home, told WCPO in 2016, "We'll hear a desk being dragged across the floor above us. We'll hear little kids' footsteps. I've heard voices with my own ears when nobody is here but me and my wife. I just can't explain it." Paranormal investigators have been called in, and the building is also used for community events. According to Daryl, most leave the school having experienced something strange. He says the school's motto is, "When you leave, you believe," and that honestly sounds perfect because that sounds terrifying. Especially hearing students' footsteps and voices, that is a no from me. Number 3. Helltown. Founded in 1806, Boston Village, aka Helltown's original claim to fame was its standing as the oldest village in Summit County. Boston's relatively uneventful life took a turn for the worse in 1974 when the National Park Service decided that Boston Township would be the new home for a new national park and began buying the properties of its longtime residents. The empty houses were boarded up and adorned with U.S. no trespassing signs. But then the government quickly fell behind on its plan to create the park and the village sat neglected. The hellish aura of the area only continued to grow when rangers visiting the site became ill and covered in rashes. It was soon discovered the dump was highly polluted with toxic chemicals improperly disposed of. Also, in the village there is a church which is said to have been built by Satanists complete with upside down crosses. There's an abandoned bus that is said to be the host to lingering ghosts, and maybe the most outlandish of all, there is talk of mutants who were created by the chemical spill, including a monstrous snake known as the Palencia python, so I would never want to visit there. No. Number 2. Dayton Masonic Temple. The Dayton Masonic Temple was constructed between 1925 and 1928, and it has wonderful architecture. A woman said she went for a tour there led by a man named George. I sat down in a chair for a little bit, he scooped me up by the elbow and led me along, she recalled, saying that he guided her to a photo of Masonic's graduation classes over the years. He directed me to a specific year, and there he was in the picture. He was a jolly, portly gentleman. After the tour, she spoke with some Masonic officials who had brought her there to take her on the tour. One official in particular asked her stern questions about the areas she had toured. She mentioned the man, George, and the photo. The skeptical official asked her to show him the picture. When we got to the picture, he turned pale, she said. He said, "That's the guy I see around here all the time." So yeah, she got a tour from a ghost. And honestly, that's pretty cool because I'm sure he gave her some inside information about it all, but that's kind of spooky. And coming in at number 1 is Victoria Theatre. Victoria Theatre is 150 years old, and there have been many sinister events there. For example, the story of a touring actress in the early 1900s who went to her dressing room to change for the next scene and never came out of the room. No trace of her was found, though fewer and fewer actors would use that dressing room, with reports that some would look into the mirror and see her face staring back again. In the 1950s, a man ended his life in the theater by wedging a knife into a seat in front of him and throwing himself upon it. When the curtains around the left exit door are pulled, some people claim to see his face. Staff members through the years have said that they've heard strange noises like rustling of satin or suddenly smelt the scent of roses in the air. Others are said to have seen the ghost of the Victoria's founder when they're alone in the building. Diane Schofler-Warren, Victoria's spokeswoman, said that many of the historical theater's longtime volunteers and staff like to blame these strange occurrences on Miss Vicky, who was not a real person. Every theater has its legends, such as the legend you don't say Macbeth in a theater or the legend of the ghost light in the theater, she said. The ghost stories are particularly popular with the Victoria's volunteers, but as we all know, 99% of the time, you're not going to the theater to get goosebumps from ghosts, but rather from the fabulous performances. I don't know though, that sounds pretty terrifying to me.
And starting off the list, we have Myrtle's Plantation in Louisiana. Built by General David Bradford, the grounds of this former plantation are said to be haunted till this very day. People tell stories about ghost sightings and strange events that happened there. The house was built in the 18th century and has a history of different owners. As you can probably imagine, some pretty terrible things happened here, and some folks claim they've seen ghosts of unfortunate souls who met their end on the property wandering around the grounds. Not only that, but it's said that the structure was built over a Native American burial ground. Classic horror type trope there. There's a story about 2 youngsters who died from poisoning, and their spirits are said to show up in photographs taken within the house. People also say they hear footsteps, doors opening and closing, and even voices when no one is around. The house has been investigated by paranormal experts, and some say they've recorded unusual sounds and seen things that they can't explain. Visitors and workers at the plantation have reported feeling a cold breeze and seeing apparitions and feeling like they're being watched. The Winchester House. In San Jose, California stands the Winchester House. This has to be one of the strangest homes in the entire world, perhaps even one of the strangest buildings, period. Most of the construction on the mansion was ordered by Sarah Winchester, the widow of William Wirt Winchester, whose father invented the Winchester rifle. Sarah was devastated by the loss of her husband and consulted a psychic who told her that she and her family were cursed by the spirits of those who had lost their lives at the hands of Winchester rifles. Sarah believed that the only way to appease those spirits would be to constantly expand on the Winchester mansion, and for 38 years she resided there, with construction happening day in and day out. As to why an angry ghost would be appeased by a mansion having new bits added to it constantly is still a mystery to me, but that's what she believed, so that's what she did. And the result is this incredibly bizarre home. With a series of pointless rooms, stairs that just lead to nowhere. It's almost like some AI program was tasked with constructing a mansion without understanding the purpose of one. I'd love to check the place out, because that just sounds so darn strange. Rainham Hall. This massive-sized country house in Norfolk, England, has a very famous ghostly image associated with it. This one right here. This is said to be one of the most convincing ghost photographs of all time, taken in 1936, supposedly a snapshot of the Brown Lady, a female ghost in a brown dress that is said to roam the property. The Brown Lady is the ghost of Lady Dorothy Walpole, who apparently had an affair, and upon finding out, her husband locked her in a chamber in the mansion where she was neglected and mistreated, eventually passing away in 1726 from smallpox. Many visitors of the building still claim to have run-ins with the ghostly figure of the Brown Lady till this very day. Some just hear her footsteps as she ascends the stairs, others experience unexplained drops in temperature, and some even claim to see her full-bodied apparition. Next on the list is what is said to be the most haunted place in India, Bangalore Fort in Rajasthan. Visitors say that strange things happen there, like unexplained noises, eerie voices, and even sightings of shadowy figures. The story goes that a curse was placed on the fort, which led to its downfall. Locals believe that no one who goes there at night makes it out alive. This belief is actually so prevalent that the fort is actually completely off limits at night. It's said that the place becomes unusually silent at night. Even the Archaeological Survey of India has put up a sign advising against entering the fort after sunset. And legends say that a magician fell in love with a princess and cursed the fort when she rejected him. Number 6, Willow's Weep. This house was built in Indiana in the 19th century and is said to be one of the most evil haunted houses in the USA. So, first of all, when you look at the house from overhead, it's shaped like an upside down cross. Like, depending on what side you're looking at it, of course, but where the front door is, it's an upside down cross. So that's definitely ominous. The place has been featured in documentaries, one of which is narrated by William Shatner, and paranormal investigators flocked to the house to try and interact with the malicious spirits that are rumored to reside there. And I do mean malicious. This home has a very dark history with many gruesome deaths having taken place within its walls. Next up, we have the Fairmount Hotel McDonald in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So yeah, it's a hotel, not a house, but I had to throw this one on here because I think we all need a change from your standard ghosts and demons in human form, and this place is haunted by a horse. An undead horse, of course, so I feel no remorse in talking about this ghostly force. Who wants to see me do an entire list in rhyme? Nobody, hopefully. That's what I really hope. That would be an actual nightmare for me to try and script, and probably for you as well. Anyway, the story goes that in 1914, as this hotel was being built, one of the workers' horses dropped dead, and now the spirit of this steed gallops through the hallways at night. Many guests claim to hear the sounds of hooves trotting down the hallway, especially on the 8th floor. It's also often heard in the basement. But this ghost horse isn't the only source of paranormal activity in the hotel. It's also said to be the spirit of a sailor on the property. Whatever, yawn. But one creepy thing that staff report is occasionally receiving calls from certain rooms on the 6th floor from guests making requests. But when they quest up to the room, they're distressed to find that there's nobody there. The room is empty. Staying in Canada for a bit, we have the Mar residence in Saskatoon. This place was built in the late 1800s and has a history tied to the Northwest resistance. The house has changed hands over the years, and there are stories of ghostly happenings. People claim to have seen apparitions and felt strange cold spots in areas. There's a tale about a soldier who died in the house during the resistance, and his spirit is said to still linger there. Some visitors have also reported hearing footsteps and doors creaking on their own, whispers when no one's around. The house has been looked into by ghost hunters who claim to have picked up on eerie energy and unexplained phenomena going on there, and workers and guests have shared experiences of feeling watched or sensing some sort of presence there. Ghost stuff, you know? Number 3, we have the Moore family house in Villisca, Iowa, also known as the Villisca Axe Moida House. On a dark night in 1912, June 9th to be exact, an entire family of 6, the Moore family, as well as 2 guests, were found dead, with axe wounds to their heads. There were a couple of suspects, but the crime was never officially solved, so it's said that the spirits of the people who lost their lives on that night now roam the property. There are ghost tours of the place now, and there are stories of people hearing the disembodied voices of the young ones of the Moore family. Ladders have been seen moving on their own, as well as other objects, and some have apparently captured strange stuff in video and audio recordings. This place even allows overnight visits. That's something I gotta try. The Woodchester Mansion. This Gothic mansion in Nimsfield, Gloucestershire, England, has stood abandoned since the mid-1870s, and its construction was never actually completed. It's believed to be haunted due to numerous reports of paranormal activity. People claim to have experienced strange occurrences like unexplained footsteps and your standard ghost stuff. Some visitors have also reported seeing shadowy figures moving throughout the corridors, while others claim to have heard disembodied voices echoing from the empty rooms. It's said the construction was halted after the sudden death of the architect's son, and the mansion was just left unfinished. Aside from the spirits that may or may not rest there, the Woodchester Mansion is home to a rare species of bat called horseshoe bats that roost in the attic in the summer months, and these bats have been extensively studied since 1959, so that's pretty cool. And taking first place is the Sultan's Palace in New Orleans. This luxurious home was built in 1836 and was purchased by a Turkish man claiming to be a sultan, and as soon as this man moved into the French Quarter home, things got completely out of hand. There were constant parties, loud music was always heard, he had a harem of women that would... But as to exactly what was going on in that house, there were only rumors, and some of them are pretty dark, some of them are just kind of general, oh, there's shenanigans going in there. There's a lot of versions of this story, but no local had ever been invited inside. One morning though, after a very stormy night, a man was walking down the streets of the French Quarter and noticed red liquid trickling down the steps from the Sultan's palace. It was streaming like a small river, running through the cracks in the cobblestone, and the man ran to the police. And what they discovered inside the home was a complete massacre. There was immediately this overwhelming metallic scent in the air from all that red stuff, and there were bodies everywhere. Many of them had been dismembered. Limbs were scattered around. They continued through the house only to find more and more bodies until they made their way out to the courtyard. Soil was heavy and muddy from the rain the night before, and sticking out from it was a hand with its fingers spread as if desperately reaching for help. It was the hand of the Sultan. He'd been buried alive. So, who was it that committed this horrific act? Some said that the Sultan wasn't really the Sultan after all. He was the Sultan's brother and made off with all of his brother's women, so his brother hired a group of mercenaries to dispose of him. But until this day, it's still a mystery.
Number 10. Malabar Farm. Malabar Farm was built in 1939 by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Louis Bromfield and was his home until his death in 1956. But before it was built, another family lived there in the 19th century. Celie Rose, a challenged young woman who lived there with her family, developed a romantic fixation on a neighborhood boy. When Celie's family told her to stop claiming the boy as her fiancé, she mixed rat poison in their porridge. Her father and brother died, but her mother survived. At her trial, Celie couldn't understand why her parents didn't come to see her. After all, she said, the rats always came back after her daddy fed them rat poison in the barn. Afterwards, she went on and lived with her mother, whom, yes, she tried to kill, but then Celie poisoned her again, and this time it worked. At age 23, Celie stood trial truly alone, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a state hospital. She lived out the rest of her life in an insane asylum, and since then the house has been haunted. One visitor saw a woman dressed like Celie Rose outside the house. People have seen lights flicker, felt a phantom cat, disembodied voices are heard, and there's an overall eerie feeling on the property. Yeah, no kidding. Number 9. Beaver Creek State Park. Although this park is beautiful during the day, it has a darker side at night. A portion of the park was once part of a canal system from the early 1800s. There are 2 locks that are said to be haunted. Jake's Lock is said to be named after a former canal worker who was struck by lightning while walking across the top of the lock. He died instantly, but some claim that on certain nights, especially stormy ones, Jake returns with his ghostly lantern to continue his evening's work. work. Spooky. Nearby, Gretchen's Lock is said to be haunted by the ghost of a canal worker's daughter. Legend has it her father put her coffin inside the lock until he could load her body onto a ship headed for their homeland. But when the coffin was loaded onto a ship bound for home, the ship was lost at sea and didn't make it. Gretchen, pleading to rejoin her mother, reportedly makes an appearance at the lock every year on the anniversary of her death, which is just very sad. Number 8. The Wandle House. The Wandle House was constructed in 1916 by the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway with funds contributed by railroaders. The Brewster Railroad YMCA featured 62 dormitory rooms used by the railroad workers, a restaurant, movie theater, and bowling alley. Today, the building is home to the Historical Society and houses memorabilia from baseball team photos, class pictures from Beach City and Brewster schools, railroad memorabilia and equipment, payroll records, and military uniforms. It's filled with tons of history, so those from the past like to visit. While there, you might come across Teresa, who worked in the eatery around the 1940s and 50s. People have also reported hearing noises, seeing doorknobs turning on their own, and dark figures. And even one time, someone who was doing work in the basement of the building watched a person walk through a wall. Let me just say, I've seen a ghost walk through a wall before too, and it's creepy, so it's not something I'd like to see again. Number 7. Crybaby Bridge. Locals say if you stand on the Alliance Area Bridge at night, the sound of crying can be heard. Some say that mothers who did not want their sons or daughters during the baby boom would toss them from the bridge into the river below in the dark of the night. Others believe the cries stem from members of a cult kidnapping locals and ending their lives as part of their secret ritual. And finally, some say ghostly cries stem from a distraught mother who lost it after her daughter would not stop crying. In desperation, she tossed her over the bridge to her death, and upon realizing what she had done, the woman reportedly drove off the bridge her own life. This is all around sad and creepy, but if I heard crying noises without anyone around and on a bridge nonetheless, I would be terrified. Number 6. Old Chestnut Grove Cemetery. The story goes a woman accused of witchcraft was executed and buried at the cemetery. The townsfolk did not erect a marker, but instead built an iron fence around her grave, which was next to an old tree. An indentation next to the tree inside the fence marks her grave, and it's said that bad things will happen to those who get close to her grave. Another variation of the story says that several witches were executed and buried here, and their ghosts continue to haunt this area, which does not shock me. Not only did this happen, but on December 29, 1876, the number 5 Pacific Express was traveling over a high bridge, carrying approximately 159 passengers and crew when the bridge collapsed. It sent the train and the people on it into the ravine below, and 92 people died. Many were burned alive while trapped inside the crushed cars and are buried in a mass grave at this cemetery. Due to this, people have seen ghosts of the passengers, and unexplained voices on tape have been recorded. Number 5. Malsalon Public Library. Let me just say, there's more than books in this building. Before it was a library, it was a house, and former residents Clara Baldwin Barrick and Annie Baldwin both died in the home. Clara lived in the home from 1895 to 1909, and her daughter-in-law Annie died in the home in 1931. This might explain why this place is haunted. Some visitors have heard footsteps or smelt an unfamiliar perfume. Employees get a chill with no explanation in the outreach room located in the basement of the former home. A patron once claimed to have been pushed by an apparition while in the library, and a security camera in the library caught the elevator traveling to the 3rd floor at 3 a.m. The doors opened and a bright light could be seen, and the phenomena has been caught on tape several times, and there is no explanation, and that is just like an immediate no. Director Sherry Brown, who has worked at the library since 1979, said she was working in her office, a former bedroom of the home, after the library closed when she thought she saw an employee walk past her office door. She yelled out but got no answer. When she investigated, she found no one. Paranormal investigators have conducted research in the library and have gotten responses from the ghosts during electronic voice phenomenon sessions, and if you thought libraries were boring, let me just say this one definitely isn't. Number 4. Loch 4 Park. An incident occurred here in 1857 which has resulted in the park being haunted. A canal worker, whom some say was the loch tender, may have been angry about the potential of work being shut down and wanted revenge. The angry worker doused his fellow workers with a container of acid or some type of caustic liquid. It's said the enraged worker tossed the lid open and flung the contents on his fellow workers, dumping the remnants on himself. Legend states that no immediate deaths ensued, but rather the men suffered gruesome, slower deaths that took several days. A few men perished due to their acid-eaten skin and organs. The man responsible also died. Today, screams and moans of those who were burned by the acid supposedly can still be heard by some if they listen closely while visiting Loch 4 Park. Also, the loch tender's cabin, which is located in the park, may also be haunted by the spirit of the angry worker. Number 3. Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle is reported to be the most haunted house in Ohio. Rumors about the eerie castle began to surface after multiple deaths occurred in the Tiedemann family while living in the mansion. The home was built in 1883 by Haynes Tiedemann, a banker and co-founder of the Union Banking and Savings Company. And let me just add that the house has 4 stories and more than 20 rooms and 80 windows. Now, Haynes allegedly tore down another house on the property where 4 of his children had died. His first wife, Lucia, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s. The American businessman would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they encountered a crying girl in white on the 3rd floor. But when Miss Romano investigated, no one was there. Soon, the family started hearing haunting organ music and heavy footsteps. 2 of the older Romano children woke up one night to find something yanking the blankets off their bed, and Miss Romano once awoke to find herself screaming on her bedroom floor with an unseen presence screaming beside her. A priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974, they did. But the hauntings didn't stop when the Romanos left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window. Since reports of hauntings at Franklin's Castle increased, many turned their suspicions onto its original owner. Number 2. Sister Century House Restaurant. Now a restaurant, this building has seen a lot in the past. It was built in 1870 and has been home to several businesses in historic Canal Fulton throughout the years. It currently houses a family-owned restaurant, but was most notably home to a crematorium, which was located in the basement back in the early 1900s. I mean, since this place was once filled with dead people, it's no shock that it's haunted. There have been rumors of shadow people, a poltergeist in the kitchen, ghostly ladies in the basement, the entrance to an old tunnel, and even an unusual room that makes people a bit dizzy. The food, though, seems to be great, as the restaurant has a 4.6 star rating, so if you want to see some ghosts and have a great meal, I suggest you check this place out. And coming in at number 1, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory opened its doors on September 15, 1896 to its first 150 offenders. These prisoners were brought by train from Columbus and put immediately to work on the prison sewer system and the 25-foot stone walls surrounding the complex. The reformatory remained in full operation until December 1990, when it was closed via federal court order as a result of a prisoner's class action suit citing overcrowding and inhumane conditions. For example, in the late 1930s, a riot broke out in the East Cell Block. The guards condemned 120 rioters to share 12 solitary confinement cells for 1 week without food or water. This punishment drove many to the brink of madness and death. During its 94 years as a working prison, 154,000 inmates passed through the gates of the Ohio State Reformatory. Many died of diseases like influenza and tuberculosis, some went mad, others ended their lives, and at least 1 inmate lit himself on fire. Just outside the reformatory, there are 215 numbered graves. While visiting, people have reported being pushed and punched by unseen forces. Many claim to feel a chill while on the prison grounds. People have also heard cell doors slam shut and seen dark apparitions. Even the road leading to the Ohio State Reformatory seems to be haunted. Local legend suggests it's the ghost of Phoebe Wise, a notorious hermit and eccentric.
We're starting off the list with Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona. There is some disturbing stuff going going on at this place. At least that's what I've read. This place is teeming with former guests who checked into the hotel and never left, having met gruesome ends. Their spirits are now lingering within the establishment. One ghost, or in this case a pair of ghosts, are two women who were thrown from the 3rd floor back in the day and now spend their time as ghosts attempting to strangle male guests in their sleep. One long-term guest in the early 80s had a strange hobby of hanging meat from the chandelier in his room. One day he was found dead in his room. That room is 220, and guests and staff report strange activity going on in the room. Some staff just veer clear of it completely. The TV is known to turn on its own. This even continued after the TV was replaced, and some report the feeling of being touched by a cold, unseen hand. Number 9, the Hotel del Salto. This Colombian hotel was first erected in 1923 and has quite the reputation. That's why it has its dark nickname, which I can't really say the name of here, but suffice to say, a good number of people have died here. This place is absolutely gorgeous, overlooking the Tequendama waterfalls, but legend has it that in order to prevent being captured by Spanish conquistadors, the natives of the area would jump from these very cliffs. During the hotel's operation, a good number of people took their lives there or would fall by mistake, and this picturesque building became steeped in sadness and despair. The building still stands today, now having been transformed into a museum, but some still say not to go near the property at night, as countless lost souls still roam the grounds. At number 8, we have the Hotel del Coronado. This beautiful San Diego hotel is known to have had some pretty famous guests like President Ronald Reagan and Katharine Hepburn, just to name a couple. But there's also one ghost who checked in and has never left. Her name is Kate Morgan, and she's been haunting the hotel since her death in 1892. Kate Morgan had checked into the hotel and spent a few days there before taking her own life. She'd had stomach cancer and was waiting for her brother, who was a doctor, to arrive and assist her with her illness, but he didn't show up, and she hadn't received any letters. Her spirit is said to roam the property to this day, still waiting for her brother to finally arrive, especially on the 3rd floor. Her room is frequently requested by paranormal enthusiasts. There's another ghost supposedly said to haunt the hotel though, an actress by the name of Isadore Rush, who drowned by the beach in 1904. Staff have reported seeing the lights turn on and off in her room that she'd been staying in, even when the room is empty. Next, we have the Mermaid Inn in East Sussex. This historical building was built at some time in the 12th or 13th centuries. With a building that old, it's no surprise people say it's haunted. Gotta say, it'd be pretty incredible to stay in a place like this. This place has quite the history. It was originally frequented mostly by medieval sailors. From 1420 to 1770, it was a bar and an inn, which was frequently visited by the Hawkhurst Gang, a group of privateers who terrorized the area. The Mermaid Inn saw a number of deaths at the hands of these criminals over the years, some of which had been attempting to snitch on them. One of the leaders, Thomas Kingsmill, who was executed in 1749 for his crimes, is said to haunt the inn till this very day. The inn was eventually reopened in 1993, and guests have reported seeing a ghostly figure of a woman in white standing at the front of their bed when they wake up. There's also the spirit of a maid who died at the hands of a smuggler in room 5, which has been reportedly haunted well before the modern era. And of course, you have Thomas Kingsmill himself, who supposedly haunts a rocking chair in room 17. At number 6, we have the Mizpah Hotel in Nevada. This hotel opened in 1904 and was one of the first luxury hotels built in the state. It's a really nice looking hotel with Victorian era decor. I imagine it looks almost exactly as it did in the 1900s. As luxurious as this place is though, there's a dark piece of history that still lingers within the walls of the building to this day, and that is the death of a guest whose name has been lost to time, but is known simply as the Red Lady. The Red Lady was believed to have lived at the hotel, providing a specific service for male clientele, the oldest trade in the world. The story goes that one of her clients saw her with another man and in a fit of jealous rage took her life. In some versions of the tale, she was strangled, in others she fell to her death from the 5th floor. But no matter what version you hear, it all ends the same way, with her spirit lingering within the hotel. Men will sometimes hear her disembodied voice whispering sweet things in their ears. Some have reported finding a pearl from her broken necklace under their pillows. You know what? That doesn't sound bad, actually. I'll take a pearl and a seductive whisper. Why not? Number 5, the Omni Grove Park Inn. You can find this lovely historic hotel in Asheville, North Carolina. For years, however, guests and staff alike have reported feeling the presence of a spirit simply known as the Pink Lady. The Pink Lady was a former guest at the hotel who unfortunately never left. She's often described simply as a pinkish, smoky haze, but will sometimes take on the form of a young woman in a pink ball gown. The story goes that the woman was the mistress of a married man and was staying in room 545, the room she's said to still haunt to this very day. She met her end falling from the 5th floor balcony to the 3rd. In some stories she was thrown, in others she jumped herself, but the Pink Lady sounds like a pretty fun ghost, to be honest. Some report their room being rearranged at night, lights turning on and off by themselves, and some have even woken up in the middle of the night with their feet being tickled. Never heard of a ghost doing that before, but I appreciate the creativity. Next up is the Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio, Texas. It's pretty obvious why this hotel is so supposedly haunted. From 1924 to 1976, the building was a hospital, complete with a morgue and crematorium. It didn't become a hotel until 1984. Staff and guests have reported all sorts of strange phenomena going on here. You have your more standard ghost stuff, of course. Maids will clean a room only to come out of the bathroom to see pillows tossed onto the floor, doors opening and closing on their own. I'm sure people hear things. Sometimes the elevators will randomly stop at various floors for no reason. Some guests have said they've heard the phone in their room ring and then they've gone to pick it up. There's no one on the other end of the line. One story goes that a guest had returned to her room after dinner to find that her bathtub had been filled with blue water. Now that could be an outright lie, or a staff member just went into her room and had a bath while she was out. But there are a lot of other strange things that go on here. The creepiest reports are those related to the lingering spirits who met their end as hospital patients. Some claim to hear the sound of a hospital cart being wheeled down the hallway. The smell of antiseptic often wafts throughout the 14th floor especially. There are also shadowy figures said to move across the walls with no visible source. Number 3, the Ancient Ram Inn. Now, unfortunately, you can't actually stay in this place now. The owner uses it as their home. Man, I'd love to get a room here. The place was built all the way back in 1145. That probably isn't super exciting for the Europeans in the audience or like anyone really outside of North America, but I don't think I've ever stepped foot in a place that old. Anyway, you can only imagine how much history surrounds this building. This place was actually built on the grounds of a 5,000-year-old pagan burial site. Reports of strange occurrences, including ghostly apparitions and disembodied voices, have been reported, and as to what spirit or spirits these voices belong to, one of the most famous legends involves a witch who was supposedly burned at the stake on the property at some point in the 1500s. There are also legends of a number of tragic events, such as human sacrifices that are said to have taken place within its walls. And number 2, we have, of course, the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles has a notorious history marked by a series of incredibly grim events. It's become quite infamous for its association with criminal activity and unsettling paranormal occurrences. The 1940s saw the Cecil being linked to several unalivings, leading to its pretty blunt nickname. The hotel was also the temporary residence of the infamous Richard Ramirez during his horrific spree. One of the most well-known incidents in modern times was, of course, the case of Elisa Lam in 2013. Her mysterious death and that eerie elevator surveillance footage captured attention from everyone across the internet. And for all these reasons and more, many have claimed the building to be incredibly haunted. Reports of strange noises and ghostly sightings have been being claimed for decades. And lastly, we have the Langham Hotel in London, England, said to be one of the most haunted hotels in the country. The hotel was built in 1865, so a lot of guests have stayed at this place over the years, some of which have never left. There are said to be 5 primary ghosts that haunt this building. Some people apparently hear a baby crying at night. Well, I mean, I guess babies might stay at the hotel, but if it's just a disembodied baby voice, that's creepy. One primary ghost is that of a German prince who fell from his upper story window. Staff have reported seeing his ghostly figure moving through walls. His presence is also always accompanied by a drop in temperature. Room 333 is supposedly the most haunted room. One man, a BBC newscaster, woke up to see the ghostly figure of a man in Victoria-era evening wear. The figure hovered in the air. It had no legs. Classic ghost kind of look. The figure started floating towards the man with its arms out, as if it was going to grab him. In 2014, several English national team cricket players left the hotel in the middle of the night because of supposed paranormal activity going on in their rooms. They reported sudden, unexplained heat, their bathroom taps turned on by themselves, and they just had this uneasy feeling of a strange presence lurking in their rooms.
Number 10. The Bisman Building. The Bisman Building was built in 1886, and fun fact, the film Shawshank Redemption used this place as a filming location. If you have seen the film, the building is used as the entrance to the Brewer Hotel, where Brooks and Red stayed after they were paroled from Shawshank. The real building, though, is haunted. While here many people experience a feeling of dread and sadness, particularly on the 3rd floor. Many people also report an overwhelming sensation of darkness when on this floor, so if I were you, I would just stay away from the 3rd floor in general. Disembodied footsteps, voices, being poked and pushed, black shadows, and dark figures caught in images seems to be something that happens a lot. Spirits of a young girl Ruthie, her aunt, and the spirit of a retired worker who died in an accident before leaving the building are 3 identified spirits that stay here. In past investigations here, investigators have received audible responses to their questions. Yep, the ghosts spoke to them. One piece of audio evidence was when an investigator asked if they could speak to Ruthie, and a voice was caught saying, "Is Ruthie here?" In addition to Ruthie, people have witnessed the spirit of a woman throughout the upper floors, people in Victorian clothing, and the sounds of people working. Number 9. Staley Road. Sometime in the early 1800s, pioneer John Wrench used the services of 3 Staley brothers to build a flour mill. The finished structure was to become the first double-wheeled mill in Ohio. The business flourished, and after several years, John had made enough money to retire and ended up selling his mill to Elias Staley. The mill was then passed down to his brother Andrew and continued to produce flour until 1905. Today, the mill is still standing, and on Staley Road, named for the brothers, winds its way past and through the woods. It has become something of a rite of passage for local teens to drive this road at night to show how brave they are. It's been said that Old Man Staley went on a rampage, ending the lives of many, and is now haunting the road. Motorists say that they often experience unexplained car trouble, and some have even seen Staley's ghost standing next to or even lying in the road. Number 8. The Golden Lamb. As the oldest hotel in Ohio, the Golden Lamb has seen more than its share of famous guests, including Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Daniel Webster, and 12 American presidents. Yeah, 12. It's fantastic, but there's also been death and tragedy in the hotel. Guests have cited a girl who may be Sarah Stubbs, the niece of the hotel manager in the 1800s, or possibly Eliza Clay, a girl who died of a high fever at the hotel in 1825. The ghost of Charles R. Sherman, an Ohio Supreme Court justice who died at the inn in 1929, is said to appear in the hallways as a gray, gaunt man and conjures the smell of cigar smoke. Charles's death left his wife and 11 children, including Civil War General William T. Sherman, penniless. As a result, most of his children were put up for adoption, and some say the guilt of his family's demise keeps his spirit at the inn. Number 7. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the tunnel is framed by a faded stone archway covered in moss. The tunnel itself is long and extremely dark. It's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town. If you're brave enough to
to venture through it, you might see the ghost of Frank Lawhead, an unlucky train conductor who met his end in a head-on collision with another train. Visitors in the area have taken photos with cameras or phones, only to look back at them later and notice the pale figure of a man they didn't see before, or phantom train lights blazing at the end of the tunnel. It's also said if you listen carefully, inhale deeply, and blink intermittently, you may encounter spirits from another time. The piercing whistle of a train rounding a curve, the smell of lavender wafting from a woman in an old-fashioned dress, or even the glow of gaslit lantern illuminating the face of the weathered brakeman. So that's fun. Number 6. The Buxton Inn. The Buxton Inn was built by Orrin Granger in 1812 as an inn and tavern, and it also served as Granville's first post office and as a stagecoach stop. I'm just gonna say it, this place is haunted. The first ghost spotted in the Buxton Inn was the first owner, Orrin. Other ghosts include the Lady in Blue, rumored to be the former innkeeper Ethel Bonnie Bonnell, Major Buxton, whom the inn was named, and even a phantom cat seen slinking along the halls. There's been strange activity like footsteps and doors opening on their own reported in the inn's basement, where stagecoach drivers would often stay during their stopovers in the past. However, the ghosts just don't stay in the basement. Oh no. Rooms 7 and 9 are said to be the strongest places for activity, with apparitions appearing. One guest even reported a ghost cat showing up to cuddle and purr in the middle of the night, which, like, aw, that's so cute. Guests have reported strange phenomenon throughout the hotel though, like their names being called out and invisible footsteps. I would not want to sleep there. Number 5. Woods surrounding London. Okay, again, not London, England, but London, Ohio. Deep inside these woods sits an old abandoned barn that is so rotted away it is practically melded back into the trees. It's rumored that ghosts like to spend some time here. If you ask anyone from the area, they'll tell you that these woods are haunted. According to legend, a family of 5 was traveling through the woods in the late 1890s when they were stopped and had their lives ended by a band of thieves. Those brave enough to wander through the woods of London at night have reported hearing gunshots and disembodied screaming. Others have felt a sudden drop in temperature before seeing a strange white mist hanging in the trees. Let me just say, it's a no for me. Number 4. Ridges Asylum. Ridges Asylum originally opened in 1874 and was known as the Athens Asylum for the Insane. It had 2 wings, one for female patients and one for the male patients. The most violent patients were housed at the outermost tip of each wing. By the start of the 1900s, the asylum had become dangerously overcrowded, and rumors of inhumane treatment at the hands of the overworked staff were growing. Despite this, it was not officially closed until 1993. Some parts of the building are still in use, while other areas are completely abandoned. One of the scariest places in the building is the outline of a body where Margaret Shrilling died in 1979. She apparently got lost in the disused part of the hospital in the winter of 1978-79 and was not found for more than a month. When the corpse was eventually removed, it left a stain that could never be washed away, which just makes me gag thinking about it, but imagine the smell, like, ew. Ugh. She is one of the many ghosts who is said to walk the asylum at night. Strange figures have been seen roaming around the old floors. Others have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and screaming. Most appealing to imagination is the basement. Some claim severely disabled patients were kept on chains in dungeon-like places. Some say they've even heard the chains being pulled. Oh, and there's also a cemetery on the grounds which holds over 1,930 bodies. Of those, 700 women and 959 men lay under the headstones marked with only a number, which is sad. Number 3. Bobby Mackey's. Built in 1850, Bobby Mackey's is said to be the most haunted nightclub in America. When it was first built, the building served as a slaughterhouse and meat packing facility. The standard for most slaughterhouses of its day, the facility featured a well to collect the runoff of animal blood, innards, and other waste. If that image wasn't icky enough, there have also been several deaths in and around the club throughout the years. The place harbors energy so dark that a portal to hell is rumored to swirl somewhere within its basement. There is strange, suffocating heat, a trash can once flew through the air, and the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache appears in the mirror. I would not want to get anywhere near that place ever. Number 2. Licking County Jail. Originally opened in 1889, the Licking County Jail is now home to only prisoners serving afterlife sentences. It contains stacks of cramped, grimy cells lining its dimly lit halls. Since being put out of commission, the jail has become a notoriously haunted hotspot. While it was operating, a total of 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates died on the premise. If you make your way to Licking County Jail, it's said you should peer between the cell bars as figures of prisoners are said to peer back. Visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming, being touched, whispering in your ear, whistles, the sound of footsteps, some of those being what seems residual, the jingling of keys, screams and moaning, as well as seeing strange light anomalies, full shadow figures, and photos with unexpected images in them. That sounds absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to go there. And coming in at number 1 is Sedamsville Rectory. The Sedamsville Rectory is a historical building that once served as the home for priests of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. Priests of questionable moral character were rumored to live here, if you know what I mean, including a man who was moved around considerably before retiring from the priesthood, leaving some to believe the church was covering up his tendency of mistreating animals. His fellow priests later confessed to hearing strange sounds coming from his bedroom and feeling uneasy in his presence. As the alleged site of the mistreatment, it's no shock that the place has some wicked demonic energy. Reports detail strange howling cries and deep scratches appearing in the flesh of workers. The current owner of the building, Terry Scott, even claimed that she was pushed by an invisible force. The presence was so evil that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism, but his efforts did little to keep the demonic energy at bay, and whatever monster lurked in there still remains, and I would not want to mess with it. Number 10. Newbury Airplane Boneyard. In Newbury, Ohio, resident Walter Saplata hosted a collection of military aircrafts from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Though often called an airplane graveyard, Walter would have preferred the term sanctuary, as he was saving the aircrafts from being turned into scrap metal. The sanctuary featured approximately 20 stray aircrafts that Walter collected from his scrapyard job in Cleveland, junking thousands of warplane engines that were declared surplus, according to his son Wally Saplata in a November 2007 issue of Air and Space magazine. Walter used to open his property to the public, but in recent years, the aircraft boneyard has been kept private. He passed away in November 2010, and today it is unclear what remains of the aircraft graveyard.